Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time at Impossible Live, welcome. If you're popping back in live or for a replay, we are delighted to have you. And while you're popping in, please let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know if there's an introduction that would make your week or make your day. And I am delighted to introduce you to our amazing guest today. Now, one of the fun things as we've been doing this, and I have to thank you, you made selecting this title like so easy. I don't even know. And I appreciate how we met because we met as a result of amazing Jenny Stevens and her She's Empowered series. And I didn't have a chance to catch your presentation live, but boy, I just loved meeting you during the Q&A. I knew I was like in the best of hands. There was a brilliant, intelligent woman on the other ends, and I'm delighted we're having a chance to kind of catch up and connect. And without further ado, and to help me keep pronouncing your name beautifully and accurately, I would love for you to introduce yourself so that everybody knows how wonderful you are. And thanks for joining us at Impossible Live.
Of course. Well, my name is Leezá Carlone Steindorf, and it's lovely to be here. It was such a pleasure when you contacted me, Melanie, and said, "Oh, I heard you, and I love what you're sharing." And actually, all that I'm sharing are things that have become clear to me and what I think everybody really knows deep down inside. So I'm really only a megaphone, if you will, for the truths of the beauty inside of you. That's how I see what I do. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here, and cycles of life. I'm curious, Melanie, where you would like me to start in jumping in here. Yeah.
I think we can go wherever you'd like. And Anna, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. From the perspective of, I'm a baby boomer. And I love it because I was talking with a talented entrepreneur last week, and he says, I thought you might be in your 50s from your bio. And I smiled. I said, that's very generous. I said, you are on the south side of my actual age, but thank you so much. But I think when we think of cycles, we don't necessarily think of the fact that things in our life repeat. I'm writing a book, for example. In the process of writing Brave Conversations about the undiscussables, it started as like a presentation that I wasn't sure it would be a signature presentation. Each time, though, I'm having a conversation about it. It's about something in a different cycle. We think of wash cycles. Hey, Yasmin, welcome back. We think of how we have certain patterns in our lives. And I think that's where I'd love to start with cycles. Where do you think we get stuck sometimes as things repeat in our life that we haven't necessarily sorted through the first time, and now it's back?
Well, my experience and my belief is that it's never back where it was the first time, right? So it's just like you can never put your foot in the same river twice, right? The next time there's a completely different constellation of water and fish and plants and so forth. And the rocks have shifted and the grass is different. And so when subjects, patterns, situations come and you're like, oh, this sounds so familiar. I feel like I've been here before. I think of it as a spiral, and we're spiraling up, and we might come back and touch this place again. But the next time we come back, we're at a different level of it, right? So recognizing that it may be familiar because there are still lessons here for us, but we're not in the same place, and we can't be stuck. As long as we're still breathing, we're still moving forward. Like we're changing constantly. Every cell in our body is changing. Our tissues, our organs, they are exchanging sometimes completely differently within hours. Stomach lining, I think. Other parts of us, within months, others in years. And so it's an illusion in my belief system that we're ever redoing something, right? Even if you're a musician, you're playing a song again and again and again. Each time you play it, it's a new rendition. You're feeling it a different way. You're putting an emphasis on different notes. You're expressing with a different feel. So that's how I look at patterns.
That's kind of cool. I think starting to look at them, possibly because of the book, and Yasmin said it. Wow, she really said it. We're not in the same place and we can't be stuck. It is powerful. It's one of the reasons too is we're leaning in to join Leeza's amazing gems. I think the part that's when you feel that deja vu sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
complex example, families, it's one of those extended seasons, as I call them, of gratitude, grief, and growth.
Mm.
And some amazing family members are experiencing their fourth loss
Yeah.
in a very, very short period of time, like in 4 months of siblings. And
Mm.
one of my cousins, she's one of the youngest. She's like the 10th out of 11,
Mm.
out of 11 siblings, but saying goodbye to 4 siblings. We've been talking, yeah, about the stories or the memories, and each celebration has of life has happened differently. Some have happened on Zoom, some have happened, live. I had a chance to see her last month finally to give her a hug on during the third loss. And now they're experiencing the fourth loss with less of them around to kind of support them and lift them.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're going through the process, she asked me for photos. This is the first time. Hey Cheryl, how are you? Welcome. She asked me for photos of one of our cousins, and I fell in love with him. We were talking before about military backgrounds and relatives in the military. And he had served in the military, but he reminds me of my Uncle Donnie.
Mm.
And we're having this amazing conversation the first time I met him. And he's telling me about, hey, Aries, he's telling me about the first time that he met me as a child. And
Well,
I'm laughing in a sense because we live 5 or 6 states away. I hadn't seen him as an adult in like 30 years.
wow.
So he's telling me all these great stories about my dad, which I'm loving because dad has vascular dementia. He's sharing great stories about my uncle. And I love the pattern of his welcoming style. He took a
Mm-hmm.
picture with every single person, every single relative that was there that day. Whether
Wow.
he took an individual shot with you or he
Mm-hmm.
took a group shot, he took pictures with siblings, with their new grandchildren, with
Mm-hmm.
his nephews, with his great nephews. I mean, just there was such a warmth to it. And I said, I want to remember that as
Yeah.
a new cycle, that we don't have a lot of family reunions.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a lot sometimes of celebrations of life other than graduations and weddings and christenings and all sorts of things. But what I loved was his reminder to take a pause
Mm.
and disrupt the pattern.
Yeah. I
So I
like
love what you're saying about that there's a power in there.
There is, and I find that there's so many layers to our patterns, to our um, ways of being that are familiar to us and familiar to others. Yesterday, we had been up on an island in the Puget Sound, and friends of ours gifted us with the abundance of their garden that the earth blesses us with constantly. And I came home with these bags of vegetables, and we stopped by a friend's house on the way home. And I went into the back seat to get some of these vegetables to share with yet more friends. And my daughter said to me, she's 23, she said, Mama, that's so you. You're giving everything away. So I'm not giving everything away, right? I'm sharing. That's what I do. And my friend said, and look at how excited she is doing that. Right. Because and I recognize that's one of my patterns. I bake and half of it goes out the door, right? I receive something and I think, who can I share this with? So we have these patterns of being. That's one thing I think we celebrate too little, right? We can pick out what we don't do well and when we make mistakes and when we weren't kind and we, berate ourselves on that. But those delightful things that other people love us for, right? So to look for those patterns, I think is important. And then what you were speaking about, Melanie, in the cycles of life, there are those bigger ones. And I'll share just two, and they are They're rather impactful, even if I go with the three. And yet there's there's something consistent in them. And we were talking about that, what connects it all. And there's a constancy in us. So I grew up in violence. My dad came back from Vietnam, and we call it PTSD. At that time, he just was, beyond the pale and anything with rage and violence and so forth. So living through that, recovering from that, finding my peace and my joy in myself, and shedding anger and harshness was a huge process for me. And so when I was in my mid-20s, I felt like I'd already lived 5 lifetimes just to come to a place where I could be okay to waking up in the morning, not being angry, not feeling traumatized, right? So then later I get married, have this, I thought, wonderful marriage, beautiful children, 26 years. And my first husband has a psychotic break, which means he takes all of our money of 26 years, walks out the door, and disappears. And I'm left with 2 children whom I adore. And in a foreign country, I lived overseas most of my life. So to be in that situation and just devastated and picking up the pieces from that, I moved to the United States, and I meet the love of my life. Like, I didn't even know that people say that's like, oh, the love of my life. Like, that really is a thing. And when the first time I met him, Yule, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, there I am." And that, I was like, oh, it was like coming home. And so we were very well matched in values, in advocacy, for our planet, for peoples, and so forth. And we were coming together for a weekend to plan on, do we live here? Do we live there? Do we rent a house? What do we do? Do we work remotely and travel? And I drive down. He lived an hour south of me, and he wasn't home. Couldn't find him. Turns out he was killed in an accident that night. And so I share these very, like, for me, powerful, also traumatic experiences. And when Yule passed, in such an unusual way, because it was literally the weekend we were planning on, okay, let's now, solidify this and so forth. And I thought, there's a consistency in this. Like, these experiences are all remarkable. They're not just, oh, my car broke down or I had to, move houses. Like, they're all very remarkable in themselves. And I thought, what is that? And what I recognized for myself is I live very big. My spirit is big. My heart is big, and I live big. I live in a big way. I accept risks. I'll try things out. I include people. That's who I am. And so it makes sense that, in my opinion, the events in my life are going to be big, right? And so it took me almost a year. When you first met me, I think that was one of the first events I did again after Yule's passing. Like, it took me almost a year to just be able to breathe again without pain. But what I recognize is that our love and my relationship with him was so huge because of how I live. So what is our constant as we go through? So life happens and things change, and we lose siblings, and this pandemic has been horrific on so many levels. I hear stories from people that are just heartbreaking. And then I ask, and where are you? What is that constancy? So when I spoke about that spiral, but you're the one moving, right? You're the one that's always there for yourself. And when we can anchor to that, when we can know ourselves that way and live from that place, it anchors us. It gives us strength and allows us to navigate without wanting to give up.
Wow.
Beautiful, Cheryl.
She's amazing. She's amazing. And you two ladies should definitely meet. Cheryl, I can promise you, second introduction of the day is coming shortly, unless you beat me to it. But I think you're so reminding us that on the other end, on the other side, that it's not always the silver lining, but I love your story on so many levels for so many reasons. The real reminder make the most of today, to approach love when we see it, when we have the opportunity, as a unique gift
Yeah.
that the universe or some wonderful guardian angels have just lined up for us. It's an opportunity.
And also our grief. Like, I mean, whatever is, to meet that with that part of ourselves that's always there. So one of the things that I learned, and it was I guess all learnings you're not expecting, but this one was very surprising to me. And that was that I didn't grieve, I was grieved. We don't breathe, we are breathed. We don't walk, we are walked. And so for me, I remember one of the first times I went to the grocery store after Yule passed, and in the vegetable section, why? I don't know. I just had this wave of grief, and my daughter was with me, and we sat down right in front of the tomatoes, and I sobbed in the grocery store because it was there then. And in that grief, just like in our love, to touch that part of ourselves, to not be occupied with, is this right? Is it funny? What's going on? I shouldn't be doing this. I should be over this. It's inappropriate in public. All of those conversations, to just let that go and to be with what's here right now. Or when we love someone, like how gorgeous you are there with your earrings and your hair and just how you shine, as I wrote in LinkedIn, right? That you're radiant. And to share that with someone, and we say, oh, I can't say that, and now we're on a podcast and one doesn't say that, and this is business, and and to anchor from that place in yourself that's always there, and trust that and love that and be from there. That, I feel, is what carries us through all those cycles and all those spirals.
I thank you again for that, because the day we met, we had just found out that our first relative passed this spring. And I was in a hotel the day we met for Q&A.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, if I was in a different place, and you always think of sometimes how you're showing up, and
Yeah.
the depth of what we feel in the emotions. I mentioned recently, from a different perspective, at a birthday party shortly after our cousin's wake. They had her wake on uh, her second husband, scheduled her wake on her birthday, on her 74th birthday.
Mm.
And people decided in the funeral home to sing happy birthday.
Aww.
So they sang happy birthday, the standard version, and then they sang happy birthday, the Stevie Wonder version. And I
just got goosebumps.
I love that song to my toes.
Mm-hmm.
I realized, though, 2 days before a friend's combined 65th, 75th birthday, first time we were out to go dancing to celebrate life in a hall, I heard both versions again. And both times when I heard these versions within like 60 some odd hours, it's kind of like an echo chamber was going off in my brain. I remember, and I said later, that the next time I hear happy birthday, I'm really worried about my response. I remember saying that on our way home.
Aww.
And we're with friends, and it's a wonderful, loving celebration. I've never been so grateful for a chair in a corner.
Mm.
And I was the only one who couldn't get up for happy birthday. I couldn't move. As you would say, I stayed deep within that emotion.
Absolutely.
And I was shaking, and I talked to a really good friend the next week, and she says, Mel, you are always talking about grief. And this is Exquisite Eve, for those of you who have met her. And Exquisite Eve says, Mel, you must write about grief. You must write about grief. And I think she was reminding me, you have to disrupt the pattern, or as we're saying, the opportunity. We never know when the cycle will hit us. We never know when grief will hit us. We never know how we'll respond.
Mhm.
whether we're going to be calm or the time of a celebration, it may take us someplace else.
Absolutely. And honoring that. I mean, that's our humanity. And I think there's, I've traveled this globe extensively, and in our Western colonized world, in this country anyway, there's the illusion that it has to be a certain way, and there are these social paradigms. You go to other countries, I've spent time in some of the African countries and Asian countries. When they lose someone, their clothing is torn, like they sob, like they take time to process that. And at the same time, I feel, because they allow themselves what I call that bone harrowing grief, gosh, do they celebrate. Like that delight and appreciation of life is so right there, because they know the other, right? We can't have light unless we know darkness. And so, yeah,
Mm.
I honor you for honoring yourself. And what a beautiful modeling for others who have grief and who don't know what to do with it, and don't run off into a closet, but stay right where they are and allow that to be.
I just remember, like you said, no embarrassment. It is, Aunt Ethel would say all the time, and her saying, and it was at the end of her celebration of life program, and so it is.
Yeah.
And I could hear the Aunt Ethels. I said, that's the one interesting thing as we move through this journey of life, wherever we are, whatever age, whatever stage,
Mhm.
whatever country, whatever our location is. But really the reminder to give ourselves the permission to experience it fully, no matter what the cycle is, no matter what stage we're at. And
Yeah.
I remember many, many years ago having an issue about expressing emotions. People sometimes would say, keep it under wraps, keep it buttoned up. I remember a very magical trip to Tahiti. It was my bridge between full-time employee and full-time entrepreneur.
Mm.
And I remember watching the joy that the local women had,
Right.
whether they were going to work or they were playing with their children, or you saw them on the beach or in the water. But I remember thinking, wow, what a joy. You could feel it
Yeah,
the second you got off the plane.
that's right. That's right.
It ended, unfortunately, the second you left on that red eye. But
Well,
you know,
and it doesn't have to end for you. And very often I'm the person, that people are like, what is with her? But you know what? Anymore, I literally don't even notice that anymore. And I'm so grateful that I've raised my children that way. And my daughter came with me on this trip, and we're both just so lit up that life emerges when you're lit up. And it also is painful when you're lit up, and it's delightful when you're lit up. And when you're close to yourself in spirit, you can't be numb to what is. And that, and honoring not only the cycles of life for ourselves, but also in others, just the natural cycles, if you will, without any specific events. I was thinking about, um, on Friday night, we went to a dinner with friends, close friends, and not one person other than myself really addressed my daughter. And they were all older people, right? And I thought, at the end of the evening, I said something to one of the elders, and I said, we have people here that have such wisdom because they haven't been tainted and they're not carrying decades of narrative with them. Let's listen to them. And the following day was totally different. The youth were involved and included. And the same thing at the other end of the spectrum. The elders in colonized societies really don't get I won't say it that way. People aren't understanding the depth and the richness, the value of our elders and what they bring to our lives and our understanding, and how we can lean on them and learn from them, right? So the traditional cycles of life also, I feel, are important to recognize and to honor, and to let those in and find out, where am I in that, right? Sometimes I'm an elder and sometimes I'm the youth, right? Depending on who I'm with. And those different roles have a lot of gifts, different gifts.
I love that. reminder, as Clarine's reminding us, is when you're going through major life changes. I had
Yeah.
the pleasure of joining Evelyn Asher in a wonderful wisdom collective.
Mm,
And it was about a week after this birthday celebration.
mm,
And I was surrounded by these amazing poets, and they were reading poetry to each other. And
mhm,
then they'd have a writing break.
mm,
It had been a while since I had written poetry. In the process of their writing breaks, I started writing about my dad's 88th birthday,
mm.
about our cousin's birthday during her wake, about our
Wow.
friend's
Yeah.
birthday celebration. As we will no longer joke, the second book will be born.
Yeah.
But I could not believe the wellspring kind of
Yeah.
from writing it. And just like Clarine's saying, I really, in the process of writing, I stopped writing and suppressing.
Yeah.
And looking back at it, I they had 2 writing breaks. One was 10 minutes, one was 20 minutes. I cannot believe what I wrote in less than a half hour, but I was really honored because
You
they were
touched.
reading beautiful poetry.
Yeah.
And when Evelyn realized what was happening with me, and I was really surprised to be on the younger side of the Wisdom Collective, and
Right.
very, very grateful and
Yeah.
honored, to join them, that they allowed me to share.
Irene saying that she's also learning to not suppress. The unfortunate thing is that in so many societies and families and religious groups and schools and whatever, is we're taught, don't feel that, don't do that, that's not okay, right? And then these, as I had said, Clarine, I was grieved, right? It's not like I said, okay, I'm going to go grieve now. Just suddenly it's there. There was not choice in that, but there was choice in how I be with that and to honor myself, right? In those different stages, as you're talking about, Clarine, and saying, wow, there's this. And also then when it wasn't there, I remember the first morning I woke up and there was peace again. Oh, it's like, oh, I'm okay. Right. And then, a month later, I go to Home Depot at 7:30 in the morning and I'm getting out of the car and woof. Why? I don't know. Home Depot at 7:30 in the morning, but there it was. So I sat right back down that car and I just sat with it and I let that be. And I was really honoring of that experience. And I feel like if we all did that for ourselves and for each other, right? To let ourselves be held, like with my daughter in front of the tomatoes that day, and just having somebody witness what's going on for us, not making us change and pull us, and be a very different world, a lot more kindness, a lot more gentleness. Yeah.
It reminds me, I think today, one of our LinkedIn friends shared that it was almost like an Angel's Day. I have to look it up exactly what Vicky Lynn put up, but it was a reminder just to really be kind and to honor our angels, whether they're guardian angels that, I'm always grateful and appreciative of them, or we're running into other angels on earth to
Mm,
really appreciate those. But I think just thank you for reminding us to truly be gentle with our emotions. I remember in previous years, and especially in professional settings, you would be encouraged to not necessarily share emotion. I had an amazing coworker, and our former employer, unfortunately, could really get on your skin, under your skin. My response was I started smoking more, and I'd take a walk and go out and have a cigarette, or I'd go downstairs and get a veggie shake and just take like a good 20 minutes to kind of decompress before coming back to deal with whatever their issue was. But my wonderful coworker would get really emotional. She would take it so personally. And I remember thinking he hired her because of such a wonderful, warm, big
mm,
heart she had. She was the mom in the office, with like 3 children. And if you needed something, she always had the sewing kit. I called her the mayor. She'd have the sewing kit. If you need whatever you needed, it was like
yeah.
Al had a let's make a deal kind of
So
desk
funny.
or pocketbook.
So funny. Well, I was just going to say, it just reminded me that, even in that environment where the boss was so challenging, that there was someone else that gave you that support. I think one of the fallacies, the illusions that we've fallen into believing as truth, is that we're alone. And I walk an Indigenous path, and the understanding is that all of our ancestors are with us. Like they're not gone. They may not be in physical form, but those who have loved us, who have come before us and paved the way for us, are right there with us. And those spirits, you're calling them angels that are here to love and support and uphold us. And that's not a concept, and it's not a, oh gee, it would be so nice. I mean, that's a reality. And when we understand that we're really not alone, again, I come back to that anchoring, right? That part of ourselves, that part of our experience where it's like, yeah, that's there. And sometimes it expresses itself with someone who has a, let's make a deal person. Other times it's the grocery clerk, and other times it's your best friend or your partner who just knows exactly what to say or not to say, right? And to recognize that we are not alone. We are all, we are connected. I mean, we all come from the same source, right? So we can't ever be separate. And when it feels that way, that's the time that we really can tune into knowing that we are connected and we're always upheld.
Mm, I love that, and so treasuring that from hanging around with amazing strategic alliances and coaches who have
Mm.
helped me understand there's definitely a council of light. And you know what? Mine's busy. I'm grateful for them. We're not always conscious sometimes until those really dark times, as you would say. I remember I'm the oldest grandchild on one side, and I was Nana's girl. And Nana would say, guard your light, guard your light. Don't anybody mess with your light, mess with your light. And Nana started saying that because she noticed in between semesters, one semester I came back and my light was dim.
Mm.
And Nana, rather than asking what was the matter, she did the Nana thing. She stroked the left side of my head, and she said, just go guard your light.
Oh,
And I didn't realize at the time because we had never talked about it. She was a domestic violence survivor
wow.
and
Wow.
really conscious to the
Yeah.
change in your beat or your rhythm. She
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
she was my first Cherokee, to kind of sit down and hang out with. But
Hmm.
and on a really deep soulful level, but she really reminded me, I think, of some of the inner vision stuff that it just takes us a long time to accept it, to know, as you're saying, that it's there, that it's part of our core, or as we were saying before, and I totally forgot to share it because boy, we're having fun, is about constance. Thank you, Clarine. I think all the time of my Nana and the guarding your light.
Hmm. And you said to recognize it or realize it. My experience is that it's a remembering. We know this, Melanie. We know our goodness. We do. And I think that our biggest struggle in the civilized world, if you want to call it that, even, I actually beg to differ that it is civilized if we can't be who we are and share that freely, right? But the biggest struggle is to take the courage to really know how amazing we are. Marianne Williams wrote a book called A Woman's Worth. I don't know if it was in the 90s. Amazing book. And that's what she spoke about. In this case, concerning women, but it's not only women. I work with a lot of male leaders as well. But people in general are afraid of how amazing they are, because when we were little and we were just being our big selves and being happy and going out there and doing what we loved and being lit up, boy, that's when it was the most painful. That's when we got the biggest whacks upside the head of, don't you do that, get yourself in line, right? And so every time we approach that of, oh, I could be, nope, oh, it'd be so, nope, right? We rein that in. And so to find that courage to just woof, and sometimes it's very soft and gentle. Doesn't mean it has to be loud and audacious, but still to have that courage. In my experience is one of the things that I do is I love to love people. Like I so love people. Like I'm one of those people who'd be on the street with free hugs. Like that would be me, right? But as a kid, boy, I got so much guff for that, and people made fun of me. So I got really tough and cool, and like I don't need anybody, and and it took me so long to come back to, I just want to give you a hug. And so honestly, when I meet people in public, there's still a very, very small, not often, but small hurdle that I have to go. But now it's like little thing. And I'll just go and say, oh my God, you are so amazing. Oh, I just love what you said, or you look so beautiful. And people are like, what? What did you, who do I know you? Right? And then it's like, oh, thank you, right? Because they have their own wounding around that. Yeah. So to come back to that constant of who you are, of really knowing yourself and letting and loving it, letting that shine, which I think you do great.
I have to thank you. Hey, on the great days, I'm hanging around under my wonderful Gloria Zoom blanket, you know, or chilling out somewhere looking at the clouds or checking out the stars. I think you reminded me too one day to introduce you also to Lori Ostrovsky of Simply Leap. Lori's first book, she started a hug tour,
There you go.
and she's got a T-shirt. She went and hung out. It's a hug tour. It's a hug tour. I think what you reminds me of too, as we're looking inside and we're not really sure what is guiding us. I know for me, it's family, it's extended family, and
Mhm.
it's a really strong faith walk now.
Beautiful.
And the reminder that during that faith walk, I am never alone.
Yeah.
It takes a while, you know, and you're sometimes in really challenging situations, it feels like, or those stretches, those breakthroughs, those twists and turns that lead you to some sort of mm, really big transformation. But I love that you're reminding us that inside us, there's a constant that guides us.
Oh, absolutely. And we all know it's there. And I think the most disempowering phrase that we can use is, I don't know. It just takes it all away. And to be able to give ourselves permission to say, oh, I'm not quite clear yet. And then to go with that, to
See,
allow that language.
I think I've accepted now too I like to think about that. Or let me get back to you.
Exactly.
That we don't necessarily in the teacher's kid, we always felt, you know, when somebody called on us that you had to like have an answer.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to always have an answer.
When I went over to Europe, right, and my first husband was German, and I spoke no German, and I didn't know the culture, and there was no internet. You couldn't Google squat. Didn't exist. Not even cell phones. I'm totally dating myself now, right? And to stand there and say, I do not know what you're speaking about. I do not understand what you're saying. I don't know what that is, right? That I've gotten very comfortable with saying. Even last night, some acronyms in English, for me, acronyms are just atrocious. I cannot figure out acronyms for the life of me. Literally, people are like, "Oh, blah blah blah." I'm like, what does that mean? Well, you don't know what that means. I'm like, I don't know what that means. So to feel comfortable with that kind of not knowing, but the one I'm referring to is the not knowing about ourselves. I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know what I want, right? And to suspend that and to trust, okay, it may not be clear for me yet, but I do know. Like if I don't know, who's going to know, right? So it just hasn't emerged yet, or it hasn't been offered yet, but it will. And that trusting of ourselves.
I have to truly thank you for that. Catherine and I have been spending a lot of time recently in the Be Visible Shifts community, where the tagline was "Make space to emerge."
Yeah.
And the reminder as we were exploring the process of recreating a community, a virtual community, because every time it kind of feels new. There's new people there, there's new people presenting, there's new energy. But I really want to thank you. And thanks for reminding me of Nana, because I'll have to remember that that inner light is not something I ever see.
Aw.
So I want to thank you for reminding me of that. You know, it's not something we see. It's not something that we don't always feel it. We don't always feel the energy. We don't always feel the radiance.
So now I'm going to just challenge you on that, Melanie. With that smile like that, you can't, there's got to be some time, some parts of your life, some ways of being where you just feel your light shine somewhere.
So here's a good joke. I actually don't.
Really?
Mhm. And it's so, when we talk about cycles,
Mm.
It's an outer thing. Like I always say to people, and they're laughing at me, but I say it because of virtual settings. I love like smiles across the miles. I don't feel it until this year. I never felt lit up internally, if that makes any sense.
So what happened this year when you felt that way?
So this year, through somatic healing, through positive intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
one day I felt like a firecracker.
Aw.
Or like, I always love water. I always love waterfalls. I like water, flowing water. I kind of felt the inner light.
Wow. Well,
So
that.
now, and that was the first time in
Mm.
decades
Mm-hmm.
because I finally understood what Nana meant.
Yeah.
But I think we're sharing it outwardly,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't necessarily feel that beat, that rhythm, that cadence.
Right.
So I'm glad positive intelligence has anchoring and, some deep breathing
Yep.
kind of in it, and hanging around with Kim Nicoletti, who does like somatic healing, the reminder to be still
Mm-hmm.
and kind of to go within.
Mm-hmm.
And a wonderful coach also introduced me to what she called the channel of knowing. So now I know that light is there, whether it's a dim light day,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're on super bright.
And the more that you let that shine, the more that you recognize and create a relationship with your own light, that's when it really grows bright.
Mm.
When you recognize it as your own, when you own it.
It's really funny because there was a product line years ago called Inner Light, and I always liked the name of the brand.
Mm.
But I think we sometimes don't realize that's our wellspring.
Yes.
That's something to cherish, because as my family will tell you, the smile is there or it's not. There really isn't an in between.
Well,
you know?
learned that. We've learned that, right? So you look at children when they are born, these absolutely pure little beings. And if they're crying and they're all red in the face, it's not that they're angry, they have discomfort. That's how they express it. So we push our assumptions onto them and give them emotions that they're not having yet. They're just feeling this. But when you look at them, they're so in touch with their light and their fierceness and their discomfort or whatever it is. It's like so immediate. And if we're not that anymore, it's because we've turned it off. It's not because we're not capable of it. That is our natural state. And so it's wonderful to hear you saying that. Love firecracker. I like that, right? Both firecracker and waterfall, that those are things that you're recognizing in yourself because they've always been there. We've turned them off, like me wanting to hug. And actually, one of the things that just came up for me when you were talking about the waterfall is that I love dogs, especially. I love animals, but I love dogs. And so you see a lot of people walking their dogs around here, and then you go and rub their neck and everything, and and they get all that love. I'm going to start asking the owner, can I give you a hug too? Because here they are, the dog's getting all the love at the end of the leash or whatever it is. Well, what about the human? And just to see if they'd be open to that, then I'd be able to also do what comes naturally for me, which is to share, that love.
I promise you, I'm definitely going to introduce you to Lori Ostrovsky, because so the two of you can set up a hug tour, because I think our world could use more of that.
Yeah. And you can do it virtually and with your words. And yeah, I like what Catherine said, that her conviction is that the peace is that God is good. It's all good. And it's here now. It's here now. It's not out there. You have to get it and bring it in. It's right here, right now.
Thank you for that reminder to carry that with us. Leezá, you're going to have to come back. You're going to have to come back so we can continue this delicious discussion. You are going to have to come back.
Would love
But I
to.
truly want to thank you for joining us, and toast to you and the wonderful
Cheers
light.
to you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's hard sometimes where to know where to begin, but I'm grateful you're joining us today to bring us through some of these cycles of life, and to have encouraged us to kind of look deeper within and to show gratitude as we're going through these different cycles of life, and to support each other a bit more, because really it is so important.
I'll share this with you in closing. I do engraving on wood. It's been very therapeutic for me, and I love woodwork. And a very close friend of mine is a Sundance chief in Canada. He's Cree Métis. And so I showed him I was going to engrave on wood, trust the unfolding.
Mm.
And his response was, because native languages are all verb based, they are not noun based, which is very different. It's a different worldview, and it's a different expression in any case. And he said, take out the word the. And so that's what I would like to leave people with, is trust unfolding.
Mm.
Yeah.
Woo. You should see Catherine's face. Catherine and I were like, whoa, at the same, right. That is so, I'm like, we will trust unfolding with
Yeah.
your, thank you for your eloquence. Thank you for your grace. Thank you so much for joining us today, and warm virtual hugs.
Same to you. Thank you.
So grateful for you and for your wonderful energy. And thanks everybody for joining us live and for replays. And I hope you all stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, and stay in touch, and have an absolutely magnificent day.